It can be a strange world out there. And every delicious mystery might just have a nugget of truth. This is Cryptid Nuggets.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cryptid Nuggets, a Beastie Boys Paranormal Adventures podcast. I am John Stenning, and as always, I am joined by Mitch DeAngelis. Hello, Mitch.
Hello, that's me.
That's you. I feel like we're matching quite well today. You have a blue shirt on. I have a blue shirt on.
Are you also wearing black pajama pants?
No, I'm just wearing black cargo pants.
Hey, close enough.
I did get new socks. I got new socks.
Oh, very nice.
My feet are always cold. I have really bad circulation in my hands and my feet. It's called Raynaud's syndrome, if you've ever heard of it. It's one of the most boring syndromes out there, but it basically just means I have bad circulation. My toes are always cold this time of year. I got some new Darn Tough socks, and let me tell you, they're good. They're made in Vermont. We're not sponsored by Darn Tough, but I love myself some Vermont, and I love these socks. So yeah.
I personally have always been in the camp of nice, comfy, thick socks wearing around the house instead of slippers.
Oh, okay. So yeah, no, I'll wear socks with slippers. My feet get that cold. I need both layers of protection, especially this time of year. We're recording this in February. It's been pretty cold this past week or so. Yeah, so I think just slippers is wild because then your feet are getting sweaty.
Yeah, that always seems strange to me. Like,
yeah, just slippers is too much.
Yeah. See, I like a nice, thicker sock because it number one, it has the warmth, right? So your feet aren't cold. But number two, it's almost like wearing a very thin slipper because it's got that added little thickness that's giving you some support, some comfort, and if there's gross stuff on the floor, it's protecting you from that. I'm in camp thick sock all the way.
You know who else I would think is probably a big fan of thick socks? And it's maybe a species that has big feet.
Oh. No.
It would be Bigfoot. You think Bigfoot is pro sock or anti sock? Probably anti sock if I think about it, really.
Yeah. Well, Here's the thing is Bigfoot probably has never had access to socks. If Bigfoot was to be given access to socks, I think he would start wearing socks.
Yeah, I agree. There's
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's a good thought process. But like, Bigfoot's probably come across socks, right?
Well, yeah, but what are the chances that it fits?
That's the problem. It's not a size 22 or whatever.
Yeah,
it have to be Shaq's, Shaquille O'Neal's socks. There is a new Bigfoot movie on the horizon. We just were watching this trailer with our fellow Beastie Boys, Jarvis and Mike. Sasquatch Sunset. What did you think about this trailer? If you haven't watched it, not you, Mitch. If you're listening to this podcast or watching and you haven't watched it, just pause this right now and watch it. It's like 2 minutes long. It's pretty interesting. What did you think?
So I think that it is an amazing idea that is probably going to be wasted on jokes that aren't that funny.
Yeah, there were a couple of really dumb jokes in the trailer.
Like the humor is like almost too crass. Like I'm afraid that it's just going to be nothing but crass humor. Look at Sasquatch pooping in the woods, Because like for those who don't know, and who didn't bother to watch the trailer, spoiler alert. It's kind of framed as if it was almost like a David Attenborough nature documentary, something that like you would see on like National Geographic or like Animal Planet, but like about a family of Sasquatch living in the wild and what they do, right? But like the very first shot of the trailer is like two Sasquatches mating doggy style, which is funny. It's funny as like a shock gag thing, but I'm just afraid that
about
like
a second.
Yeah. I'm just afraid that like the whole movie is going to be like dumb jokes like that instead of like some actual like very clever funny use of like quote Sasquatch mythology, if you will, of like stuff that like people report in sightings, and like it'd be funny to see like a Sasquatch's point of view of like some dude's crazy sighting where he starts throwing rocks at him and like shaking the house and shit.
Like,
but
what are we doing? Yeah. It comes out kind of soon, I think, this year from Bleaker Films. This is the write-up of the movie. In the misty forests of North America, a family of Sasquatches, possibly the last of their enigmatic kind, embark on an absurdist, epic, hilarious, and ultimately poignant journey over the course of 1 year. These shaggy and noble giants fight for survival as they find themselves on a collision course with the ever-changing world around them. There's frankly too many adjectives in this write-up. This movie's going to be absurdist and epic and hilarious. I hate the term epic. It sucks. People say it way too much.
Yeah,
you know
it's
what I mean?
overused and overplayed. It's one of those words that has like lost all meaning,
Yeah, it's one of those like internet words. Like things are epic. Yeah, shut up.
Is it really
it's
epic?
A fucking movie.
Like when I think epic, I think of like the charge of the Rohirrim at Minas Tirith, not like, oh wow, this is epic. I just found a quarter. That's not epic.
Yes. Yeah, not just going to see a movie.
Yeah.
Maybe if you were in Vancouver or like in the middle of the Banff National Forest and you were like seeing this big broad thing and a Bigfoot came by you, that would be epic. But just going to watch a movie with Jesse Eisenberg and prosthetics is not gonna really not be that epic. Yeah. I don't know. The closing sentence is they're gonna bring you the greatest Bigfoot story ever told. I will for sure watch it, but much like most of the tales that you tell me on this show, I will be skeptical about it.
Well, I don't think it's gonna be any Harry and the Hendersons in terms of being one of the best Bigfoot stories ever told on film. But I mean, we'll see. Right. It's a low bar in the Bigfoot filmography. It's mostly, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's mostly cheap porn and cheap horror movies, and they're not always mutually exclusive.
No, you're right. It's usually a little bit of both.
Yeah.
So Sasquatch Sunset, interesting. It's nice to see some Bigfoot news, like in the sort of mainstream media, if you will. But yeah, it should be fun. I sort of alluded it to it just a second ago. Alluded it to it. That's not how you say that. I sort of alluded to it a second ago, but this is a show where, you, Mitch, and I'm not just telling you, but I guess I'm telling everyone, you pitch some fairy tales to me. Mitch he likes to tell a tall tale from once in a while, mostly unbelievable stuff. And I try to use my bullshit meter as a cynical person and to see, how far-fetched some of these fairy tales are. I believe today we're going to be sticking around the American Southwest.
Yes.
And what we like to do is you tell me a story, and then we talk about a food that is sort of goes with that region. So we're going to be talking about a food a little bit later. But what do you have in store for us today, Mitch?
Well, I'm glad you asked, right? Well, first of all, I want to start everything off with one of my favorite quotes ever about this subject. And it goes a little something like this. Well, you see, I'm not saying I've been everywhere and I've done everything, but I do know it's a pretty amazing planet we live on here. And a man would have to be some kind of fool to think we're alone in this universe. That's from Jack Burton in Big Trouble in Little China. Kurt Russell. That was
really good. You sounded like Kurt Russell. That was good. I was going to guess Men in Black, but you really nailed the delivery there.
Oh, thank you. Normally we've been talking about, so far the creatures we've been talking about have been more terrestrial in nature, from the planet. Yes. Today I figured let's explore the topic of extraterrestrial, right?
Nice.
And I did just a little bit of a lookup of some statistics. This is from the Pew Research Center of a study they did in 2023, right around the time that we had the congressional hearings on UFOs and stuff like that. So 65% of Americans now believe that there is life in the greater universe outside of Earth at some point, at somewhere. You know what I mean? However, only 11% of Americans believe UFOs that get reported by the military or were the subject of, those videos that the United States Air Force released and stuff, only 11% believe those are of alien origin. So I thought for fun, let's take a look at one of the most infamous UFO cases in all of history, the Roswell incident. Because...
Wow, amazing.
Because I think everybody kind of knows the basic gist of Roswell, but I'd be willing to bet that even people who are, familiar with the UFO topic, they don't really know the full everything that went on about Roswell and surrounding it and some of the more interesting details about it. And that's what we're going to dive into today. So Roswell is in New Mexico, the American Southwest. Have you ever been to New Mexico, John? I know you travel more than me.
Yes, I have. I've mostly just driving through. I've spent a little bit of time in Albuquerque. I also think I stayed in a motel somewhere in the middle of New Mexico with my brother and my dog when I moved across the country. We drove across. Yeah. And we stayed there. It wasn't much time, not much sightseeing. I've spent a lot more time in Arizona than I have New Mexico, but not to sort of compare the two. I know there's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of differences. But what about yourself? Ever go to New Mexico?
I, as you can guess, have never set foot in New Mexico. The closest I probably have ever been is Florida, right? And that is quite far away. So,
yeah, it's quite far away.
Yeah. So, New Mexico, as we know, terrain-wise, geographically, there's a lot of flat land and canyons and deserts, right? There's bits of plains and forests and things, too. Usually public perception is a very dry place, right? There's a lot of military presence all throughout the American Southwest, especially during the, post-World War II era and World War II era, where we were building bases, because it was just a lot of vacant land that you couldn't really use anyway to farm on.
It's
or
very
to grow
expansive.
Anything.
It's desolate. There's not much there. Not that many people live there. When you if you do ever have the opportunity to drive across, you'll come across a town that is just not just ghost towns, but even towns that are still have a population, but there's a type of places where it's population 600,
Yeah,
what I mean?
exactly.
It's those places are really few and far between. And it doesn't seem like, the most welcoming place to live as a human with soft, fleshy skin. And it can be pretty harsh out there, I think.
So I'm just curious, John, before we get into it, what is your particular thoughts on UFOs in general and aliens in general? Do you believe that there's life outside of Earth in the universe? Are you in the camp that UFOs are probably more man-made, enemy technology or government technology, or are they extraterrestrial? Where do you fall on that? And being unsure is, I think, a fair answer.
Yeah, so I would say, much like Jack Burton, there's no way in hell there aren't aliens.
Yeah.
Really, is sort of what he was saying there.
Yeah.
It's so, being so centralized on just, human beings to think that there are no other forms of intelligent life in all of the galaxies, right? Knowing what we know about space, which is very little, but the fact that it is expansive and growing, and it'd be wild to be we're the only forms of intelligent life. Now, that being said, are those types of intelligent life here with us on Earth? I don't see why not. I'm not totally against that, but I also think there's something to be said about the quote-unquote UFO, an unidentified flying object, or what is now being mostly known as UAVs, is that right?
UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, is now the catch-all term. They've outclassed UFO now.
Right, because that's the thing. It is unidentifiable, and especially if you are, just a person, right? Not a military expert or not an alien expert or whatever, but you're just a person out in the middle of the desert somewhere, and you see something in the sky that you cannot identify clearly as a plane or even a blimp or a satellite, then that technically is an unidentified. Now, if you were to ask the right sources, they're going to tell you like, hey, no, we can identify that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are plenty of things in the sky that people see that they're not sure what they are. Now, whether or not they are powered by, intelligent life from another galaxy or another planet, or like you said, some sort of military exercise. Not to go off on too much of a tangent, but like I saw Starlink in the sky.
Oh, yeah.
Which is like, Elon Musk's satellite system that is part of SpaceX. And I was on a bike packing trip where I sort of, you go camping with your bike, me and two friends, and we were setting up our tents in the middle of the night in the middle of nowhere in Massachusetts, right? Like no light pollution whatsoever. You could see all the stars, and all of a sudden this array of dots starts flying overhead. And I immediately recognized it as Starlink just because of paying attention to that sort of stuff and being into that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, my two friends did not know what the fuck it was. And for about 30 seconds, one of them was like, oh, please, not now. Because we were like setting up our tents after like a long day on the bike. They were like, no, aliens, wait till morning, And I was like, pretty quickly, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Starlink. And then one of them looked it up, and sure enough, it was Starlink. But like, if you didn't know what that was, like my friends didn't at first, it is very much like it doesn't look like a plane. It doesn't really look like anything other than a string of lights, thousands of feet, miles up in the sky, however the fuck high it is. I don't really know, I guess.
Yeah.
But I am open to the fact that there are unidentified flying objects, and in a greater scheme of things, there's intelligent life that is not from Earth.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it is so wildly self-important to think that humans are the one and only, that can like have a conversation like this and start their own podcast.
Yeah.
They're probably alien. They're alien podcasts. Let's be real. Yeah.
I would certainly agree.
What do you think? I would say that you agree, right?
I would certainly agree with you there. I used to be skeptical about alien visitation to Earth for a long, long time. But recent things such as, some of the congressional stuff and also, doing more deep dive research into these sort of topics, I'm not necessarily totally convinced, but I'm more on the fence than I ever used to be about. Yeah. I definitely think there's obviously intelligent life in the universe, but like as far as whether they're coming here, to observe us right now, I'm on the fence about. And then don't even get me started on whether they came like 4,000 years ago to help us build the pyramids or some shit. Like that's
right. Help us start fire or whatever.
Yeah. That's a whole other can of worms. But
sure.
So before we actually get into Roswell, we have to talk about a very important event surrounding Roswell that happened just a couple of days earlier. In Washington State, right? This is a very, very famous case of a pilot named Kenneth Arnold's, and
can't be that famous. I've never heard of it. It can't be very, very famous.
This is the UFO case that
I love that you start our Roswell talk by talking about Washington State. That's such like a Mitch.
It's going to make sense in a second, but this is like
okay. All right. What was the guy's name again? Sorry.
His name is Kenneth Arnold's, and I'll tell you about him in a sec. But this is the case where the term flying saucer comes from.
Oh. Okay. Cool.
So it's a clear, calm afternoon. It's June 24th, 1947, and Kenneth Arnold's, he's a private airman, right? So he does all sorts of things like cargo deliveries, transportation with his own private plane. And he's right now making a private flight over Mount Rainier in Washington State. And he's looking for, there was a U.S. Marine airplane that went down in that region maybe like a couple of weeks ago. And there's a cash reward for any, discovery of it. So he's looking to make a buck. He's got to take a trip from where he is to Yakima, Washington anyway, which is a town. So he figured I might as well look for this Marine airplane near Mount Rainier. So it's about 3 o'clock, and it's getting to the point where he's got to make progress on his flight path to refuel, and he abandons the search for the plane and he starts heading over the mountain, and he's seeing these like bright lights flashing in his peripheral. He describes it like the reflection of a light off of a mirror. You know how it would like glint in your eye? Yep. So he's first of all, he's afraid it might be another aircraft that he's getting too close to. It might be catching like reflection off of the metal from another airplane. But he's looking around. He doesn't really see anything except for a civilian DC-4 airplane, which is far behind him. And I only mentioned the model because it'll become relevant in a little bit. So he's witnessing this flashing light for 30 seconds, and he's trying to rule out what it could be. And then there's this whole host of bright flashing lights, and he's making sure it's not reflections from his own airplane. He takes off his eyeglasses, makes sure it's not the sun in his glasses. He's making sure it's not like a flock of flying birds or something that's like, passing through the sun and like, causing brief moments of sparkling light. So that's when he looks to his left, and he's just absolutely stumped as he sees these dark flying objects that are like sailing through the air, almost in like this bouncing sort of skipping motion. And they were disc-shaped. They seemed to, like I said, skip through the air. He described it as if someone was skipping like a smooth flat stone or a saucer across a pond of water.
Wow, I was going to say that. Damn.
And they hold...
say like a skipping stone or Angry Birds.
Yeah, exactly. Almost, right? They hold this formation as they move, and he says that they looked very large. Now, using equipment on his own plane, Arnold's was able to estimate the size and flight pattern of the objects. I'm not going to pretend I'm a pilot and I know what this equipment is and how it works, so I'm going to trust him on that. So, he said that they were roughly equivalent in size to a DC-4 airplane, which he had for reference because there was one behind him. And now a DC-4 airplane is about 100 feet in length from nose to tail. So these objects were about 100 feet in length. And the formation of the objects, there was 9 of them. He estimated that from the first one to the last one, they were about 5 miles of a formation between them.
Okay.
Moving in tandem. So, they're disc-shaped. They got these convex edges, circular. Though one object was actually crescent-shaped, and he said that one was taking point, so that was in the front.
That's the leader. Like Darth Vader's TIE fighter.
Basically, right? I have you now.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they were looking for the
to
Marine
stand out.
plane, too.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So they moved very rapidly, but they were organized. They were fast but organized, and he timed their movement as they cleared 50 miles in 1 minute and 42 seconds. And doing the calculation, that means they were moving at 2,700 kilometers per hour, which is far faster than any known aircraft at that time.
Okay.
So Arnold lands in Yakima, Washington, to refuel, and he tells some local pilot friends about what he sees, and they're like, oh, maybe it was a missile test, maybe it was, some sort of government balloon thing or whatever.
The first assumption is not aliens.
The first assumption is not quite aliens, but like...
It's how do you make this make sense?
Yeah, right, but Arnold's was just not content with that. He was like, what I just saw was impossible. As far as he knows, right? As far as what he understands about flying, and he's a very experienced pilot, what he saw was impossible. So he then makes a trip to Pendleton, Oregon to go to an air show. And then while he's there, he tells his sighting to the East Oregonian Press. And now these journalists are sort of skeptical about his report at first. But then, because of Arnold's sincerity, his experience as a pilot, he has a very solid reputation as a no-nonsense businessman, they get swayed. And now Arnold's never used the term flying saucer or flying disc himself. He, like I said, he described the objects as resembling saucers or discs in the way they were shaped and how they moved like they were skipping. And when the East Oregonian Press published a piece on Arnold's sighting, this is... what was the date here? June 24th, 1947. They published this. They used the term flying saucer and flying disc. They kickstart a firestorm of reports around the country of other people seeing similar things in the sky.
Love it when that happens. Love it when they're like, you know what? I saw one of those too.
Yeah.
Everyone comes out of the woodwork.
I know, right? But so here's the thing, is between June 25th, 1947 and July 8th, it's estimated that there were over 800 reported sightings throughout the entire nation in various newspapers and radio broadcasts about flying saucers or flying discs.
Wow.
So there's this gigantic flying saucer craze going on right now. So this is where we finally get to New Mexico. So,
okay.
Roswell, New Mexico, there's a rancher. His name is W. Brazel, right? His nickname is Mac. And he's a little out of touch. He actually doesn't have a telephone. He doesn't have a TV. He doesn't have a radio. He has no idea about any of this crazy flying saucer craze that's taking over the nation, right? No idea about Arnold's sighting, which was national news, making its way around the entire country. No idea about any of these 800 reported sightings throughout the nation, right? So Brazel's just trying to make his living on his ranch. And he's making a patrol of his ranch all alone on horseback. He comes across this really weird trail of debris that's several hundreds of feet long. And the debris seems to be metallic in nature, resembling something like aluminum or tin. It's almost like a foil-y kind of substance. There's also this rubber-like material that's everywhere, and what appeared to be maybe pieces of wood and pieces of metal, and it's like something crash landed out of the sky onto his ranch, and he thought it was strange, but he also sort of didn't really think too much more of it than, this is strange, I better get rid of this. So he starts to he starts to gather up all the debris, and he stores it in a sort of safe spot, because he needs more than just himself to come gather it up and load it into a vehicle and take it to a dump or whatever. So he says, all right, I'm going to just store it over here for right now. I have a plan. I was planning to go visit my uncle in Corona, New Mexico. I'll take care of this when I get back. So it's unknown at what exact date Brazel discovered the debris, whether it was late June or whether it was early July in 1947. But it's right around the same time that this UFO craze is going on. And Brazel goes to visit his uncle on July 5th. And this is where he first hears of all the hullabaloo about all these flying saucers and flying discs all over the news. And that's when he's like, I wonder if one of those crash landed in my ranch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's funny, like, you mentioned the metal and the rubber, and I'm all on board with that. As soon as you say wood, it doesn't seem very UFO. Wood doesn't seem, you know what I mean? Like, are there Are we supposed to believe there are trees on these other planets?
Well,
you know
so
what I mean? That's the
wood,
one kicker.
The wood is part of the sort of official story, and we'll get into what the where the official story and what the non-official story and how they differ.
Maybe part of a cover-up or something.
Yes, right? So for right now in the story, wood is found in the debris, right? So, Brazel, next day he returns to Roswell, and he goes and informs Sheriff George Wilcox about the debris on his ranch, because he thinks, hey, it might be actually one of those flying discs all the people are seeing. So Sheriff Wilcox, he comes and he investigates the remains, and like I said, Brazel already gathered a lot of it and stored it, and even the sheriff is also sort of like, this is weird, I don't know what this is. So he goes and notifies Roswell Army Airfield nearby, and he reports the crash site to them. So the RAAF, they send over a man named Major Jesse Marcel, and Captain Sheridan Cavett to the ranch to retrieve the material from Brazil. And, the two of them, they work to gather all the material that they could. They load it into a vehicle. It gets taken back to the air base. Marcel actually goes home with some of the material and poses with a picture with it, several of them, in fact, which you can find very easily. And he even showed the material to his wife and young son that was at home at the time, Jesse Marcel Jr. And, like I said, they pose for some photographs, then he takes it back to the air base. So it's July 8th when all this is happening. It's that night. Public information officer at the air base, his name is Walter Haut, and he issues a press release that states that the military successfully recovered the remains of a flying disc at Bravel's ranch outside of Roswell. The material gets loaded onto a plane that's supposed to be flown to Fort Worth in Texas at one of the airfields there. One of the flight engineers, his name's Robert Porter, he goes on record stating that the material that they loaded onto the plane was metallic in nature and that they were very carefully wrapped in wrapping paper to protect it. It was very lightweight, and he said that...
Who wrapped it? Like they did it
to
transport
they
it?
did. Yeah, to transport it, right? They wrapped it carefully in paper, and it was very lightweight, and he said that it could very easily fit into a car trunk, was how easily packable this stuff was, right?
Okay. Yep.
So, media interest in what just happened, as you can imagine, during this UFO craze, flying saucer craze, Roswell Airfield says, "We recovered one." People start going nuts. Phones are ringing off the hook at the air base, at all the local news stations, and it's exploding all over the place, all the media attention. People want answers. And that's when it's time for now General Roger Ramey, Colonel Thomas Dubose, and a weather specialist named Irving Newton to step in and sort of put the quash on things, So they do a press interview, publicized, where they identify the object that they recovered as a weather balloon. It's just a simple weather balloon. They said that there's similar devices that use a radar to detect weather patterns that get launched all over the country. That's all it was. It was a weather balloon. And now they also interview both Brazel and Marcel. Reminder that Marcel is one of the people who went to go recover the debris and took photographs and stuff. And they both go on record with very short interviews where they say that the remains were mostly tinfoil, rubber, and wooden beams. So the Roswell incident, now given this mundane explanation to satisfy the public's curiosity, people kind of actually just sort of forget about it, right? It would actually be over 3 decades before people start to reinvestigate this in like the 1970s. However, tying into this, in 1948, another supposed flying saucer crash was reported in New Mexico that's related to this, and this one is of dubious reputation. So 370 miles from Roswell lies the city of Aztec, New Mexico. And there's a...
Great name.
Yeah. There's a writer for Variety magazine. His name's Frank Scully. And he reports in 1949 issue of Variety that in 1948, supposedly, a 99-foot-long flying saucer crash-landed outside of Aztec, New Mexico, and was recovered by the United States military, who recovered 16 humanoid bodies, as well as the metallic remains of the crash. Scully's...
Wow, I like that it was 99 feet long.
Yeah, 99.
Because earlier, it was like 100 feet long, like the...
Yeah,
like
what Arnold estimated the size.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So Scully's source for the claim was these two men who were named Silas Newton and Leo Gebauer. Now, these two men were in the business of selling gadgets to oil companies to help find oil, gas, and gold. The only difference from their competitors and other bogus items on the market was that they claimed the pieces that they were selling were pieces of alien technology. And this technology, Newton and Gebauer claimed they recovered firsthand from the flying saucer crash in a canyon north of Aztec before the military arrived to receive the rest of the remains. So, these two guys are going around selling these strange devices of what appeared to be aluminum to various companies for 3 or 4 years. And they tell their story to Frank Scully. He writes it for Variety. There's, this is all over the media. Frank Scully writes several articles about flying saucers and UFOs. The only thing is that, whether it was people didn't know how to work this alien technology or that maybe these objects weren't exactly as advertised. The duo eventually get accused of fraud for selling bogus items, and there's a wealthy millionaire oil mogul who ends up pressing charges against them. So now...
Wow.
Yeah.
The rich stay rich.
So now, in the court of law, Newton and Gebauer are, under oath. They admit that they fabricated the story to Frank Scully to provide a cover story for their fraudulent devices. And they're convicted of fraud in 1953. Now, the story of Aztec, New Mexico's crash was believed to be discredited and a hoax. But just as, just like how Roswell was now just believed to be a weather balloon. And it's going to remain that way until the late 60s and early 70s when UFO researchers start to reinvestigate both of these cases. So, 1978, 31 years after the Roswell incident, Jesse Marcel, the major who was sent by the Air Base to recover the Roswell wreckage, he gives an interview with a man named Stanton Friedman. And Stanton Friedman is one of the chief leading UFOologists of the time. He's a former physicist. He's writing several books about all these subjects, about alien contact and UFOs, and he's doing an interview with Marcel. He's investigating. He heard, hey, there was maybe a flying saucer that crashed in Roswell. They said it was a weather balloon. I'm interviewing people who remember it. So Marcel's now retired from his career in the Army, and he's telling Stanton Friedman about what happened 31 years ago, and he starts recanting his earlier words in that interview he gave at the time of Roswell, where he was like, oh yeah, it was just a weather balloon, it was foil and some wind beams and shit. So Marcel stated that the explanation that the object was a weather balloon was a cover story that was forced upon him by his superiors, and that he personally believes the debris that was recovered was extraterrestrial in nature.
Wow.
So Marcel gives interviews to Stanton Friedman. He gives interviews to anybody who's going to listen to him now, to tabloids, to the television series In Search Of in the 1980s, which was one of the first big popular, it was one of the first big popular, paranormal, unknown sort of, pioneering
before
TV
George
shows.
Sulakis and Ancient Aliens.
Yes.
In Search Of. Yeah.
So according to Marcel, the material that he recovered was unlike any kind of normal aluminum or tin foil that he was familiar with. Bits of solid metal that he found at the crash site were also very flexible and malleable, while also being resistant to breaking and fractures. Like, you could bend it and it wouldn't break, it wouldn't fracture, it would hold its form. You could bend it back, but it was very tough. He said the material was incredibly light. It was like the metal had the consistency of rubber, but was far lighter than either. Now, at the same time, his young son, who he took the debris home to show, is also now an adult and is also participating in these interviews. And he says that when he was 10 years old at the time of the Roswell incident, his father showed him the remains of alien debris that he recovered from the crash site, and he remembers it being very, very unusual and weird. His most vivid memory of the debris was this metallic rod that had these glowing purple symbols on it that were, similar to like hieroglyphics or like runes or like, glowing symbols or shapes or something.
Something off of a Stargate, if you will.
Yeah, exactly, right? And
yeah,
it's right. The interesting thing is it's right around the time where like sci-fi shows like that are really starting to become a thing. Like, 1980 is right around where Empire Strikes Back gets released. Star Wars was a couple years earlier. You're finally starting to get all these alien crazed movies like the movie Alien, right? 1979,
yes,
I believe. So Star Trek had been a popular show going from the 60s onwards, so it's all right around the same time. So it's hard not to think like maybe these different things are influencing each other and what people are saying, but at the same time, could it be that reality is not as how do I want to say it, the truth is stranger than fiction, if you will.
Right. And there's also a little bit of, maybe things are mirroring what's happening in real life and people are being inspired by fiction and fiction is being inspired by nonfiction.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It is hard to pinpoint, what origin is where and but I think that I also think it's very interesting that in this time of, especially in American culture of free love and experimentation with drugs and, sort of coming out of the more proper generation that preceded like these people, like people are starting to become more free thinkers.
Oh yeah, in the 60s and 70s with the hippies, absolutely.
In general,
yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting that it's like all sort of, it's culturally a time where people are thinking outside the box more than they ever have before.
Yes. So, 1980, multiple sources, including a book that's titled The Roswell Incident, cite that alien bodies were recovered 150 miles from Roswell at another crash site on the plains of San Augustin in New Mexico. And they go so far as to say that, remember that crash I told you about in Aztec, New Mexico?
Yeah.
They say that was actually a real event and that it did not actually take place at Aztec. They lied about the actual location, Newton and Gebauer, and that it was actually on the plains of San Augustin. And it's believed that Roswell and San Augustin were of the same type of ship, possibly even from the same fleet, or even the same ship that went down over a stretch of 370 miles.
Oh, wow, okay.
Right? So, and remember, this ship, apparently with its supposed size and length, matches what Kenneth Arnold's described as the approximate length of the ships that he saw. So, the testimony about the crash and the bodies comes from 90 witnesses, 25 of which give their names publicly in the book.
Wow.
The bodies of the supposedly recovered aliens were small. They're only about 4 feet in height at the most, right? This is sort of like the stereotype of the gray alien, right? With the large heads, lanky bodies, big eyes, no noticeable mouth or nose. And these bodies are gathered up by the military, as these witnesses claim, and they're taken to Hangar 18 at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, alongside the remains of the crashed aircraft, which did not actually, from Roswell and from Augustin, which did not actually go to Fort Worth in Texas. So, Hangar 18, as it is known, does not actually exist, at least in the realm of information that's known to the public. It's sort of like an Area 51 type thing, right?
Right.
So, in addition to Jesse Marcel's testimony, the son of Mac Brazel, William Brazel, he also gives an interview, and he says that his now deceased father, who discovered the wreckage on his ranch outside of Roswell, was taken into military custody after they recovered the crash, and they forced him to say certain things in his public statements. Now, throughout the 1980s and 90s and 2000s, there's, a multitude of research of varying qualities that's going into this, getting released to the public about the supposed cover-up at Roswell and related UFO crashes. And then in 1995, Fox airs a documentary that claims to be an autopsy of an alien corpse that matches the description of the bodies recovered from San Augustin. So
Fox, like the
yep, like the TV station.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really? In 1995?
In 1995, they air a documentary.
X-Files is not too far after that. Yeah.
Yeah, that claims to be a autopsy of an alien corpse, right? Now, the footage shows this small 4-foot alien corpse being dissected on a small table by a team of masked doctors, and this grainy black and white footage. And the documentary gets super high ratings. They air it multiple times, but of course, with high ratings comes high scrutiny. So,
of course, everyone's watching.
Yeah, people thoroughly go through every possible thing they can debunk, including finding the film crew that supposedly filmed it to come out and say that it was staged, it's a fake thing, the alien's a dummy filled with like raspberry jam and like sheep stuff.
Sure.
But like that sort of like damages the whole reputation of like the Roswell thing in the public eye now, because people think it's bogus. And you mentioned the X-Files, right? There's actually an X-Files episode that came out just shortly after the Fox documentary, where they make fun of the Fox thing, because there's the point where they watch like a supposed alien autopsy. And they say that, that's so fake. That's faker than the thing that Fox aired.
Wow.
So
X-Files was on Fox, wasn't it? X-Files was a Fox production.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. It's just that's the thing. As soon as you lie once,
your reputation
it opens up the door for everything else to just be written off as a lie, And like like you said, sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction, but people are much more likely to just believe what they already believe than they are to think in a new way, So it's like, oh, well, that was a hoax. They're all hoaxes. Aliens aren't real. It's a quick and easy way to, sort of debunk anything, essentially, like not rightfully debunk, but still like mentally for someone to just be like, to write something off, because
exactly,
there was one lie. Okay, well, it can all be lies.
Yeah. But
it's unfortunate.
But here's the interesting thing is like every time that the whole Roswell thing sort of starts to flare up in public attention, the United States military also then comes out of the woodwork to give a explanation. So right around where all this is happening, Roswell has hit its peak in like 1994, 1995. The United States military decides, all right, it's time to finally come clean about Roswell and give an explanation to people. So they admit the initial story that what we recovered at Roswell, that it was just a simple weather balloon, was a cover story. It was fake. It's not true.
Yeah.
The actual device they claim that they recovered from Roswell was part of a top secret project that was known as Project Mogul. And Project Mogul is a military program in the 1940s during the Cold War, which saw the launch of, at the time, very advanced microphone-equipped high-altitude balloons that are actually in a chain. So they're connected to each other. So it's a bunch of balloons like connected to each other, and they sort of float like in a skipping motion, almost what Kenneth Arnold reported seeing.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And now these balloons have microphones on them that are designed to measure sound waves that are associated with nuclear blasts. So they're actually trying to keep tabs on the Soviet Union. and their testing of nuclear warheads, right? So, like, according to the military, flight number 4 of Project Mogul was launched on June 4th over New Mexico. And they watched it and monitored it as it drifted over New Mexico. It was heading towards Corona, which is, south of Roswell, where there's this sudden influx of turbulent weather. It made the team lose contact with the balloon 17 miles from Corona, approximately where Brazel's ranch was. So the
seems believable enough, right?
So these balloons go down, right?
Yeah.
And Brazel recovers these remains. No one really knows what it is, right? But the thing is that the people who are recovering these remains, even in the military, they're not on a need-to-know basis with Project Mogul, right?
Right. So, they're just picking up stuff and filing it away and sending it to whoever they're supposed to send it to. Right?
Exactly. They tell, everybody at Roswell Airfield, right, that it's a weather balloon, and that's the official story. And then the military also claims that they can explain these alien bodies too. So during the same time, they were also doing the testing of Operation High Dive, which is they're testing high altitude parachutes, and they're attaching crash dummies to them, right?
Oh,
and a lot of these testing is coinciding with Project Mogul flights and stuff like that, and they're doing a lot of it in the deserts of New Mexico, right, where they're dropping these parachutes. Crash dummies are attached, all throughout the 1940s and 50s they're doing this, and they're trying to say now that what people thought were alien bodies were just these crash dummies, right?
Weird that you would use a crash dummy that's like 4 feet.
Yeah, miss-sized.
It's like not like
dummy.
Average. It's not like average human size. It's like just a mini version.
Yeah, just a little
Oompa-Loompas. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, we wanted to know the effects of what if we had to conscript middle schoolers and turn them into paratroopers. Exactly.
Yeah, 12-year-olds instead of grown adults.
Yeah,
strange. Yeah, okay.
So, that's like the official explanation now of what happened at Roswell. It was these advanced spy balloons, and it was these crash dummies. But like at the same time, now you have over 90 witnesses, many of which give their names on the public record, saying one thing, right? That no, that's not what was recovered at Roswell. There was weird metals, there was glowing purple pipes, there was alien bodies. Right. We saw them, we identified them, right? It's all just contradictory. And that's kind of the current state of the Roswell incident right now. You have the official explanation saying one thing, and then you have the people who have gone on record, who have put their reputation on the line, their family's reputation on the line. Like, we're now at the 3rd generation of Jesse Marcel's
of passed down
family, right? Jesse Marcel Sr. obviously has passed away. His son Junior still alive, still maintains all that. And now even his son, Jesse Marcel III, right, is a researcher into the Roswell incident, right? So, you have multiple generations of families being involved in this now. And now here's where I think I stumbled across this during my research, and I thought, wow, this is a very interesting way to tie this all up. So this goes back to the crash in Aztec, New Mexico. And we're going to introduce someone who has yet not played any part in this. The Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Ah, yes, okay.
So in 2011, people are browsing the FBI's website of unclassified documents, because they have a thing where you can look at all sorts of unclassified documents and read them. Part of the Freedom of Information Act and all that. So there's a memo that's in these files. It's from a man named Guy Hottel, and he's an FBI agent who's in charge of the Washington field office at the time of the Aztec, New Mexico crash. And he reports directly to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. So this is a thing he wrote directly to the head of the FBI. And he's writing all about the Aztec, New Mexico crash. He's giving Edgar Hoover information about the Aztec crash that matches information that Frank Scully had. It also has various other details that seem to coincide with local reports of the event from local journalists at the same time. And after people make this public discovery, it gains over 200 million views in just 2 years, and it remains one of the FBI's most viewed public documents to this day. So the FBI seemed to at least be aware of that Aztec crash, right? That supposedly is a hoax because it was supposedly a cover story by two con men, but here they are doing their own sort of investigative reporting on it totally separate from Frank Scully. And now, so people make a storm about this, as you can rightfully imagine. And in 2013, the FBI has to now respond to what has become known as the Hottel Memo, named after the guy who wrote it, where the FBI acknowledges that the information in the memo is, first of all, it's second or third hand account. It's not the result of any direct investigation they did at the time. It's somebody gathering information and telling it to J. Edgar Hoover. But they also acknowledge that while the Aztec crash is considered sort of a discredited hoax, they themselves, the FBI, who you would think would probably be involved with prosecuting con men for fraud, they admit that they have no official bureau documents that prove or disprove that the Aztec crash was a hoax or that it occurred. So, it's just this giant web and ball of mystery.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's just like each side is constantly contradicting the other. You have all these parties involved: the military, the FBI, the whistleblowers from the military, private citizens in Roswell, con men, journalists who were duped by con men supposedly, right? And who knows what those objects were that that Newton and Gebauer had, right?
Right. They
They apparently were similar to aluminum, but then again, you also have, or were thought to be aluminum, right? But then you also have Jesse Marcel, going on record after the Roswell incident in the 80s saying that the material that they recovered was like aluminum, like to the naked eye, but
doesn't mean it is.
But it was totally different, right? So it's like, what even is the truth? What even happened? And the truth, I think, is that we will probably never know for certain.
No. We'll never know. The government got their greedy hands on it, and you can't ever trust them. Truly, I mean, I hate to sound like, someone that hosts a podcast about paranormal things, but like the government, once they get their hands on it, they can spin it in any way that they want, and they have so much power.
Yeah.
Right? You're talking about the FBI, a helpful but also very corrupt organization from the start.
Oh, for
from
sure.
The absolute
for sure.
beginning of what they did with, like taking over land from the native people of this country.
Yep.
And helping fund different mafia families in the country to suppress things that they wanted to suppress, that like the FBI alone is such a, being a private government organization that, what can you trust? How can you trust any of that information? Once the government gets their grubby little hands on it, they're going to spin it whatever way they want to spin it. It doesn't matter what the truth is.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Like,
absolutely.
They're, like people, if you're talking about these like sort of more contemporary, like, things that have become unclassified.
Yeah.
I don't even know whether or not to trust that. You know what I mean? What if they're only unclassifying the things that they want to unclassify?
That's exactly.
Everything? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like they're the ones that are holding the information.
Yeah.
And so if then they have the power as to what information is leaked or or like given out, right? We were all excited about that 3 or 4, 5 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, there's all this new footage that's being declassified, and no one
yeah.
fucking cares. No one cares.
Yeah.
Like, it is like, because you can't, I inherently, as someone that is like skeptical, I can't just trust the government just being like, oh, you know what? We were lying back in 1946.
Yeah.
It wasn't a weather balloon. It actually was this one thing that we were testing. How do we know if that's even the truth?
Yeah.
We don't. Like,
You know,
and there are so many other things that they're testing nowadays.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
We don't know. You know,
Exactly.
like, come on.
right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, as I like to say, you know, I don't even trust the government about like normal things. Like, you expect me to trust them
dude.
about aliens?
No, I don't trust them at all. I don't trust anything. They don't even know, you know, like, yeah. I mean, I guess I could go on and on about how this seems like one of those things that, like, you know, if you saw it, you'd probably be much more likely to believe it. I like to keep an open mind when it comes to intelligent life because, like I said, it's so expansive. There's no way. It'd be so much more, it's so much more less likely, or it's so much less likely for intelligent beings not to exist
Yeah.
than it is to exist, right? Like, and not to like go off on like a creation tangent
Yeah,
or whatever,
yeah.
right? But like just knowing what we know scientifically about how the human form has progressed over millennia,
Yeah.
right? How are we supposed to know? How are we supposed to know like whether or not they're like, you know, oxygen dependent life forms like us,
Yeah.
or not,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
or gray aliens with just eyeballs that can communicate telepathically. We don't fucking know, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we don't know. It's fun. It is really fun to think about. I love like the American culture of like aliens in the 60s and 70s, you know, this
Yeah,
like driving through that part of the country. There's this place in Arizona called Gila Bend. It's like at a big intersection of like a couple of bigger highways, and there are a couple different like smaller space themed like motels that have that sort of like real. I think it's like called Googie architecture. I could be totally wrong, but it's this like very much like 60s looking neon lights, big like drive-in theater type of feel. It's just like, I love the Americana that's behind alien culture, you know, that like, I don't know, it's absolutely fascinating. I feel like we're at a part now like in society in like 2024 where it's quick to dismiss because, you know, we have, you know, our phones with just like information.
Yeah.
But like,
We think we have all the
information that
knowledge
we're-
of the universe at our fingertips.
Yeah.
Where
we don't.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't.
Right?
And we're also biased by our own opinions already, you
Yeah.
know, that like, or the way that like our opinions have been formed, like because of culture and society. That's like, you know, that time, it sort of seems like a perfect time, that 60s, 70s, not the 40s, because the 40s, like news was too slow,
Yes.
right? Information wasn't passed fast enough.
Yeah.
And now information is passed on so quickly
In, like, the
that
blink
like
of an eye.
we see, you see a post on Reddit that's like new alien information. You're like, okay, next. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Like you just fucking keep scrolling, you know? But so, yeah, I don't know. It is very interesting. I also think it's, you know, that part of the country is mysterious because it is relatively desolate and bleak.
Yeah.
And, you know, like you see something that you might, you know, you see in the middle of the night that like makes you second guess it. Who knows? It could just be like light reflecting off a train that's passing by in the far distance.
Yeah,
but like,
yeah.
who knows, you know, because you're out in the middle of nowhere and there's no really way to confirm it or deny it, you know, like, I don't know. I love the Roswell story. I love aliens. I think aliens are they're at like the top of my list in form of like paranormal stuff.
Oh,
you know,
for sure,
like,
for sure. There's so many fun things to, you know, this is like, I wanted to start on this show with Roswell because I think that's like the perfect jumping up point, because you have sort of like, you know, the first real big UFO craze with like the Kenneth Arnold sighting, and then you have like the first cover-up story, and then, you know, you have you know, it just runs the gamut of like people coming out of the woodwork, whistleblowing, and then like, you know, there are bodies, and then here's this other crash, and then, you know, But like, there's so much more that can be explored that we'll have to definitely come back to, because there's all sorts of other crazy UFO sighting stories. There's obviously abduction stories, right? There's tons of interesting stuff.
Yeah, I agree, and I think because it's so unknown, it just like it keeps as long as you can stay a little bit open minded about it. There's so much cool stuff out there.
For sure.
I think like to talk about, and just like the way that like our entertainment culture has reflected it, right? Like you talk about Star Wars, you talk about Star Trek and X-Files, and like all of these things sort of run the gamut between like hard sci-fi and like just fantasy that's based in space.
Yeah.
I think all of that is so interesting and just like opens up the possibilities of it being like anything really.
Yes.
You know, like which I love. Yeah. All right, cool. We're gonna take a quick break, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll be back with a snack from New Mexico. From New Mexico itself. We got it shipped from New Mexico.
Yes, we did.
All right. We'll be right back.
You know what the difference is between you and me? I make this look good.
Okay, we are back. Cryptid Nuggets, John Stenning, Mitch DeAngelis. We were talking about Roswell earlier. We were talking about aliens sort of from all across the country, but for the purposes of our snack section, we're going to stay focused on New Mexico. So, you know, if you were a kid in middle school and you were to be doing a report on New Mexico, I'm sorry, you were given the task to do a report on the state of New Mexico. You know, you might see Santa Fe as the capital. They have a very beautiful but minimalistic state flag. You know, their official bird is the greater roadrunner. But what you might not know, there is an official state question of New Mexico. I think they're the only state to have an official state question.
Oh.
And it is red or green, question mark. Red or green is their official state question. And if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, that's okay. But it refers to the type of chili peppers that are cultivated in that area. And so there's also a license plate. There's a state license plate that's called the chili plate. And it has a red and a green chili on it, like a chili pepper, right? And the expression on the license plate is chili capital of the world. Now, not like chili like the dish.
Yeah.
But like a chili pepper,
Yes.
right? Like a hot pepper. And there are all these different types of hot peppers like throughout the world. And specifically, we're talking about what other people might know as like hatch chilies. But we're going to be taste testing some chili pepper flavored caramelized popcorn, which just sort of jumps the shark of red or green chilies. But why I think we picked this and why we think it's interesting was because like this product itself is made in New Mexico. It's handmade in Albuquerque, New Mexico, from the Southwest Popcorn and Candy Co. Mitch has the wrappers he's showing us. swpopcorn.com is where you can find these. But this stuff is like stuff that you would find in one of these roadside attractions, like a gas station or something in the middle of New Mexico. But before we get into taste testing these specific things, I would like to talk about sort of just like the chilies in general, right? I mentioned that they're hatch chilies. The red and the green pepper, they're both the same variety of pepper. It's just at different points in the ripening process, right? And so green obviously comes first, right? It's known to be lighter in flavor and smell, similar to like an onion or a garlic at times. It's got hints of like sweet and spicy and smoky taste.
Yeah.
Normally the green, when the pepper is green, it's served like it's roasted and it's peeled and it's sometimes ground into a powder. If you ever had like chili rellenos, it's that type of pepper essentially. Now, as the pepper continues to ripen on the plant, it turns red. It retains a lot of the same flavors in the green one, but it is more of like an earthiness, and there's a bit more bite to it. Sometimes it gets a little bit more spicy.
Yeah.
And normally the red chilies, they're dried and they're ground into a powder for seasoning. So they are the same type of pepper, just a little bit at different points in its lifespan. Now you can, a lot of times if you go to a Mexican American restaurant in New Mexico, you're going to order a dish and they're going to say red or green. And that's meaning, do you want red chili sauce with it or green chili sauce with it.
interesting.
And it's a little bit of a point of contention in that state. You can also order things Christmas style, which means you get it both red and green.
Oh, that's
but
fun.
I know a lot of people like either the red or the green.
Oh,
now,
really?
These peppers can grow anywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
In fact,
like you could grow them.
My family used to grow some at our older house.
Yes.
Right. They're sort of like a hook shape, right?
They are sort of a hook shape. Yes.
Yeah, and they're thin.
Yeah. They're thin.
And they
That is
start green
correct.
and they turn red. Yeah. I'm pretty sure we used to grow those, and
Yep.
you know, when they were red, we would harvest them and then we would string them up and we would actually dry them, and we would we wouldn't make them into a powder, but we would sort of crush them or sort of grind them up and use them as like those hot pepper flakes sort of things, like fresh homemade
cool.
stuff
Okay.
like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of the times too, when they're ground up, they'll like sort of rehydrate them and combine them with other spices and stuff. And you know, I've grown similar peppers, and all different type of spicy peppers are from like the same capsaicin family of peppers. You know, but the thing that I think that makes them unique is that when they're grown in New Mexico, they're like heavily influenced by the environment that they're grown in, the climate, the soil type. I'm not sure if you know this, Mitch, but like peppers are highly affected by like the amount that you water them or the amount that you don't water them. And like spicy peppers are like more spicy the more harsh environments that they grow in.
Yes.
Right. So like if a pepper is more stressed out, essentially it's the plant's response to the stress of too much sunlight, not enough water, causes more capsaicin to be produced and makes a spicier pepper.
Oh, that's
right.
interesting.
So that's why like, yeah, like people who make like really spicy peppers now, like there are like, you know, there's like a big spice craze sort of in our country for the past 10, 15 years, right? And well, one of the guys who's sort of at the forefront of like making spicy peppers, his name is like Ed Puckerbutt. He grew like the Pepper X, which is like this famous really hot pepper, and he's done so by not only like crossbreeding different types of pepper, but also has like a proprietary way of stressing them out. You know, watering them not enough, having them be in these certain climates that make them hotter, right?
Yeah.
And so the best peppers from the area are grown along the Rio Grande River in the fittingly named Hatch Valley. That's why they're called Hatch peppers.
Oh, interesting.
So originally that's where they're from, in New Mexico, the Hatch Valley along the Rio Grande. And now I'm going to tie this into aliens. I'm going to tie this into space, actually.
Oh, wow.
In 2021, some of these chili peppers were even grown in space by NASA at the International Space Station, becoming the first capsaicin plants grown off Earth.
Oh, that's neat.
As far as we know.
As far as we're aware. Hey, maybe the whole reason those aliens were in New Mexico at the time was because they were trying to pick up a little...
trying to harvest. Trying to harvest some peppers. Yeah. So, Mitch, how do you feel about spicy foods? You sort of told us a little bit of your history with peppers, but do you like spicy foods?
So I enjoy spicy foods. I will say that over time, as I've turned more and more into an old man, my tolerance for very hot spice has gone down. When I was a teenager and in college, like I would be that guy who would go to like a Buffalo Wild Wings and would order like the hottest wings they had. You know what I mean? The blazing
Give
wings
me all
or
the
whatever.
flames.
And like not be fine with it, not even break a sweat, right? Then you know, somewhere around that time, I developed what's called a geographic tongue, right?
Oh.
So if you can see
Mitch is showing his tongue to everyone.
So if
this
you can
is why
see
you should
it, what
watch
it is
the podcast.
Basically like the cells of my tongue don't stay, so they like constantly reproduce. So basically, my tongue is like raw all the time now, right?
Oh, okay. This is something that you were diagnosed with?
Yeah, my dentist diagnosed
a geographic tongue?
Yeah, it's called a geographic tongue.
Wow.
Right?
Wow, I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And basically, ever since then, you know, it's like your tongue is like fresh, raw cells now, so they're hypersensitive to things like acidicness, into spice.
Yeah.
So like, you know, even as like, you know, a good little Italian boy, I love my balsamic vinegar, but like sometimes I have too much balsamic vinegar and my tongue is like burning, you know? So it's been tough ever since then because I like spice. I love buffalo wings. I love spicy flavored things. I love hot pepper on my pizza. You know, I love it, but sometimes too much of it hurts, like physically hurts.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. I feel like I also think there's two different types of spice. There's sort of the American chili spice, right? Like these hatch chilies, poblanos, habaneros, which affect me a lot more negatively than what I would say like an Asian palette of spices, Szechuan and other peppers like that. Those peppers are more, the Asian sort of variety of spice is more like sinus clearing.
Yes.
And that's still a spice that I still very much enjoy. You know, like if I'm getting Thai food, I'm getting maybe not the spiciest Thai food, but like one notch below, and I can still very much handle it, even though it's like, you know, a lot, right? It's in a lot that I like. Whereas something like these type of peppers, if I go too hot these days, like whether it be a beef jerky or like a salsa or something like at a Mexican restaurant, that's much more likely for me to be like, holy cow, you know, and you're searching for milk or something to sort of like subdue the pain a little bit.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious, what are your thoughts on popcorn? I'm a big popcorn fan. I snack on popcorn a lot. Not necessarily caramelized popcorn, but
I love popcorn. I am
so good. Great snack.
I love, you know, I probably make microwave popcorn 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah, hell yeah. I had some last night. So good.
You know, I love, but it doesn't have to be like the microwave popcorn that I like. I also quite enjoy, you know, some of the more, you know, like the smart food type popcorn.
Just a bagged variety.
Just a bagged variety,
food,
like cheddar popcorn, you know.
Yep.
I will say I'm not a massive fan of kettle corn.
Okay.
All right.
See, though, this seems very kettle corn centric, right?
Right.
Similar to kettle corn.
Yeah,
'cause
I'm
it's
wondering
caramelized.
though if it'll have the thing I don't care about kettle corn is not the texture; it's more like the sweetness. So I'm curious if this is going to have like that sweet flavor that kettle corn has.
Yeah, I'm curious about this too because, yeah, like obviously these are chilies, right?
Yeah.
But there is some sort of like caramelization to it, which would denote
like it has
like a
sort of like a
sweetness.
sticky sort of feeling, like you would get with like a glazed kettle corn sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Now we have the bag. I'm just trying to flip. Yeah, so the bag for both the green chili and the red chili, our buttery classic original caramel corn finds a new best friend in Hatch green chili. Crafted in small batches in our New Mexico kitchen, this bold, flavorful popcorn is a thrill for your taste buds. So they were established in 1956 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and southwestern roots. Now, I do think there's going to be a little bit of sweet with the spicy. I think we should dig in and give it a try. I think we should maybe go green first. Is that okay?
Okay, yeah. I'll put my red one down. Let me dig out a green one.
I just feel like I'm seeing more spice on the red ones than I am the green ones.
Yes.
So maybe this one will be a little bit more mild.
A good way to
and
start
the red
it
one will
off.
be a
Here's
little bit.
Here's a nice close up for the people at home. Right, John's footage is much more clearer than mine. Yeah. My red one over here though looks like a. Honestly, this one right here, I don't know if it really shows, but it sort of looks like a bloody brain.
Yeah.
Right, it's got like a stem and everything. My piece right here.
Yo, wow, yours does, yeah.
All right, let me get that green one.
Wow, okay.
All right.
Wow, so I had a green one, and let me tell you, it's got a little bit of a kick to it, though. It is sweet, but there's an after kick. Wow, it's pretty good.
That's not really what I expected. And I have to have another one to sort of figure it out here.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously very popcorny. It sort of melts in your mouth, but the caramelized part is a little bit sweet. But wow, it does have almost like an umami flavor to it. You know, it hits you in the back or your throat. I do like it. I feel like the chunks are a little bit bigger when it comes to the green ones than the red ones. Yeah, I like those quite a bit. I don't think I have a preference as to like red or green chili. You know, like I'm not from New Mexico, obviously. I think if I were to order something like at a traditional, Mexican American restaurant in New Mexico, or even just a traditional Mexican restaurant that would be offering it, I'd probably want to try both.
Yeah.
You know, give me a little bit of red, give me a little bit of green, maybe have it on the side and like be dunking my enchiladas in it or whatever. But I quite enjoyed that green chili caramelized popcorn. What did you think?
Ooh, it does have a little bit of a. It took a little bit for the kick to like kick in, you know.
Yeah.
But like it does have a little like I feel it, a little bit of a tingle on like the sides of my tongue.
Yeah. Right. I'm curious if the red will be spicier.
Yeah, me too. I don't particularly care for the sweetness, but as far as like, I can taste the pepper. That's actually the most impressive part to me. Is like that taste was like, whoa, right there.
Yeah, so I just had a red one. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I'm
I
gonna try one too.
I don't want to taint your judgment yet for a red one, but it did feel a little bit different. I'm gonna have a couple more, but the red one actually for me seemed not as spicy. These are good though. I like them. I like them quite a bit.
Yeah, I just had a red one myself. I had two.
Yep.
Yep. I almost don't really taste the spice on the red one.
Me either.
Maybe it's going to take a little bit to kick in, but I also wonder if like because we've had the green already, we're already
sure.
We already got that spice going on, so now the red is just going to amplify.
The spice has been established.
It's not going to be like a different type. They taste identical to me.
Yep.
I didn't really notice any difference in taste. They both still have that like sweeter kind of kettle corny taste, which I personally don't like. However, so usually after we wrap these episodes with some of the snacks I have remaining, I usually, because I live with my parents and they're in the next rooms, I usually take the snacks to them and offer them some, right? And some they were a fan of, some they were not, but my parents, my mother especially, does really like kettle corn, so I'm curious to wonder what her opinion on this would be. But as it stands for me, I mean, it's certainly edible. I'm not gonna call it a bad snack. I'm not. I just don't think I'm the target audience for it.
I will say, as you were talking, I was trying them. I was going back and forth between the red and the green. The green is just better. I think the green is just better. It has that extra kick to it. And I guess better in the terms of like it being a caramelized and chili flavored thing. Because like you said, the caramelization is very forward on both. It's very kettle corny. The red one just feels like kettle corn.
Yeah.
The green one feels like kettle corn with like spice flavoring, which I like a little bit of a this isn't quite sweet and salty, but it's like savory and sweet. There isn't much of a salt to it, But yeah, I feel like the green ones. Oh no!
No, I'm good.
You okay?
No, it was
first death on the podcast.
No, the culprit was the water going down the wrong pipe, not the.
It was the water,
not the spice. Ugh.
But yeah, I mean, they are like really interesting to look at. I will say,
they are a very pretty snack.
They are pretty.
Probably the prettiest snack we've had on the show.
Yeah, I agree. I like them a lot, and I also like the fact that like we found this relatively small business to like get them and ship them out to us. I will tell you, they have sent me so many emails. I've gotten no less than 25 emails from them since I first ordered these things like a little bit over a month ago.
Yeah.
Like, hey, come back. Here's 10% off. Oh, hey, we noticed you didn't use your 10% off. Here's 20% off.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, I'm sure it's, like, hard to, have a small business with, like, food where you're trying to sell food. But I'm probably not going to order them, from the website again. But I am curious, our scale is whether or not you'd pay the import tax. Now, it's an American thing, so there's no other country import tax. But I'm curious how far you would go to try this again, or if you're willing, or if you're not willing to ever try something like this again.
So here's the thing: is a kettle corn variety of these. I don't think I would try them again. But that's more has to do with the kettle corn fact. But I will say, dude, if there was like a bag smart food type thing like this that had like a powdered chili dust on it, that was like the red chili or the green chili, it had like that consistency of like, like smart food or like a Wise buttered popcorn or like what's that popcorn that they have at work? The Skinny Pop, right? Something like that.
Skinny Pop,
right? I think I would love it, dude. I think I would travel straight to New Mexico for that, right? For this, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the company, to Popcorn and Candy Co. I am personally not a fan. However, I think it's me, not you.
Yeah,
and
sure. Just your palate.
Yeah, exactly. I think most people would probably find this delectable.
Yeah, in our future, I'm looking forward to a road trip where we go to New Mexico to sort of be at Roswell, and we're on the 5 highway or whatever, the 10.
Yeah.
And we pull off, and we're stopping at a gas station, and they have like an end cap of this stuff, and I would definitely buy it again. I love the idea of like the red or the green. I think like a little bit of like a fun rivalry between the two flavor palettes is nice.
Yeah.
I would love to see a bag of popcorn with a divider in the middle that has red on one side and green on the other.
Oh, if it was, I wonder if there's a way you could do, like Orville Redenbacher, which like you make on the stove. If there would be a way somehow that they could have like the chili dust powder in it, and you could like it had like a divider in the middle, so like while it's popping, it's like one side that's getting popped is red, one side that's getting popped is green. That would be super interesting. I wonder if I am not a food scientist, so I don't know if that's even feasible, but I'm sure it must be.
Yeah, I'm sure it must be too. Yeah, I just like love the idea of a very regional. New Mexico, obviously a big state, not high on population density by any means, but there's a lot of people there, and I'm sure there's a lot of people with like formed opinions on red chili or green chili, and I think that is like, culturally an awesome thing.
Oh,
that
for sure.
Like a
I'm with you 100% there.
That has a license plate that says like red or green, the chili capital of the world. Chili capital of the world. I love that. I think that's a lot of fun. And I would like to try more red chili, green chili stuff. It's not, there are a decent amount of Mexican-American restaurants around this area. I think, a lot more than there were, say, 20 years ago when we were kids.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think as a kid, going to a Mexican restaurant was a novelty.
Yes.
And now there's a lot more, but it's not like New Mexico Mexican-American food.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of the times it depends on like where people have settled from that area in now our area of southern New England.
Right. It's not, these chili peppers have been transported hundreds of miles and stored in a certain way and preserved in a certain way.
Right. Maybe they're grown in different places. Yeah. But the idea of like, peppers grown on the Rio Grande in Hatch Valley and like, I don't know. I think it's a lot of fun. I think this is a fun snack. We probably could have gone like a safer route and just like tried a red salsa and a green salsa.
Yeah, or like a chip.
To me, the fact that this is like, a chip like with those things, you know what I mean? Like this, I don't know. I think this is fun, and I like the exercise of like finding something from that area and not just something like inspired by the flavors of that area, but actually like from we ordered it from this
to the culture or to the region or I'm with you there 100%.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to, same like sharing this with my friends and family. My brother and his girlfriend are coming over. Maybe they'll try a little bit some after this.
Cool.
I'm sure my lovely wife would like to try this. And, it's a fun snack, and I think good website, good place to support. I mean, even though I'm annoyed by their emails a little bit, they seem, for I don't know too much about them, but it is fun. I did get an email earlier today from them.
Oh yeah,
unbelievable.
There's
I'm just looking at my inbox.
There's probably an unsubscribe button.
There is, but what's the fun in that? Wouldn't you rather just complain on a podcast about it? Doesn't that seem like more fun? Jonathan, Made in New Mexico is the website that we got them from. Discover our favorite winter recipes. Bring the warmth of New Mexico to your table this winter. Made with ingredients from our store. This is so good. So this is like a bunch of recipes, but that so that you're motivated to buy more stuff from their website.
Oh, that's fun.
And
that's neat.
now that I'm here, scroll to the bottom. I am hitting the unsubscribe button. I am unsubscribing. And so now you're on blast, Made in New Mexico. If I get another email after this, we know that your unsubscribe shit is bullshit.
Well, remember, it takes a couple of business days.
Yeah, of course. Even though it shouldn't take any business days, it's just a system that my email should get deleted from. But yeah, these were a lot of fun. The stories that you told were a lot of fun. I love the idea of just like New Mexican, culture of like this aliens and chili peppers, like from that area, and how it sort of has evolved over the years. So yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thanks, Mitch.
Hey, anytime, buddy, anytime.
So yeah, and for everyone if you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening on like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, give us a thumbs up, like us, subscribe, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Ratings and reviews, it really helps us. It helps us, find other listeners like yourself. And, it is I think we have a lot of fun doing it, but we also want to know that you're having fun doing it.
For sure.
Leave comments below. Maybe you live in New Mexico and you're a red chili fan or a green chili fan. Let us know. Put the opposite chili on blast. And let us know why red is better than green or vice versa. Yeah.
And all the kettle corn fans, I'm ready for you to tell me how just wrong I am. So bring it on.
Kettle corn is good, but kettle corn is also something that's like been so hyped in the past 10, 15 years. You know what I mean? Like I like going to a local festival that has like handmade kettle corn, like in the big thing. Yeah. That's like the best kettle corn. There now you can just get like you said, Skinny Pop or like Boom Chicka Pop kettle corn, and it's not the same, like. And I will say, I bought these a few weeks ago. We kept them sealed. We met up at work earlier this week.
Yep.
We were worried about them like going stale. I don't feel like they've.
No, I think,
we did put them in
they
these.
held their freshness.
These aren't the most like,
Yeah.
It's like not the most sophisticated Tupperware that you supplied us.
Yeah,
with.
yeah.
So it did hold its freshness pretty nicely, and I think that's something to be spoken to.
I agree.
Yeah. Good snack, good stories. Thanks, Mitch. Anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
No, I don't think so. I want everybody to, have a good day, stay safe, stay healthy, and catch us on the next one.
There you go. Yeah, keep your minds open, keep your palates open, and we'll see you on the next episode of Cryptid Nuggets. Thanks, Mitch.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Decaf left, regular right. Decaf left, regular right. It's very challenging work.